And we're back with more of the Shacknews Awards 2023. This time we're giving out an award for Best Xbox Series X Game of the Year. It's also a Series S, right? But it just, you know, it just sounds stupid to say Best Xbox Series X/S Game of the Year. So we're just going to call it Best Xbox Series X Game of the Year. I can't wait for
There you go.
Microsoft to come up with even smarter branding for their half measure upgrade that's obviously coming down the road. Or didn't they already announce one? Or no, it was just a chocolate Xbox. That's right.
There you
Uh,
go.
that's what they're up to. Anyway,
It's tasty.
Microsoft, they own Xbox, and they made games this year. I believe they made three games this year. Starfield, which is obviously made by Bethesda Game Studios, which is a subsidiary of Microsoft. Forza Motorsport, which doesn't have a number, they're just rebooting it, I guess. Forza Motorsport. And another, I think it's a ZeniMax property, Hi-Fi Rush,
Yeah.
which it came out so early in the year that a lot of people may have forgotten that it came out this year, but it came out and it's actually a delightful surprise. Uh, Also available on Game Pass. I think all the three games I just mentioned are available on Game Pass or were on day one. Our fourth nominee is Minecraft Legends, which is also an Xbox subsidiary, right?
Yes.
Didn't they buy? They bought
They own
Minecraft.
First
Minecraft,
party,
yeah.
technically.
Yeah. And then a couple of third party games have received nominations for Xbox. Lies of P, also known as Pinocchio Souls, and Resident Evil 4, this little game out of Capcom that you may have heard of. Uh, I actually played. I've been playing RE4 remake on Xbox Series X. It runs very well, and it's fun as hell to play with a controller, and it's excellent. I love that game. But yeah, let's jump into it. Who Donovan? You reviewed Starfield,
I
right?
did.
I know that
Mhm.
Bill was also helping with coverage on that. He was our guide's lead on the game. But I know you both had some time with it. But Donovan, would you like to
Yeah.
talk about your review experience with Starfield?
I would because I love Starfield. I'm a big Bethesda fan. They're in my backyard, so to speak, here in Maryland. I was looking forward to this game a lot, and I'd say it delivered in a lot of ways. I think it's one of those games where, like, obviously going into it as a Bethesda fan, you're either like an Elder Scrolls person or a Fallout person. Like, I'm big into Skyrim. Bill loves Fallout 4, so it's kind of fun to just like bounce back and forth with our thoughts on this game as that grew over time, playing during the review period up to and then after release. I think it's great. It's for better or worse, like very much a Bethesda RPG, right? Like it's got all of those Bethesda isms in there. It's a little glitchy here or there. You've always got your standard 1, 2, 3, 4 um, dialogue options, but I think that it does something really special with this world building. I don't think I've ever stopped to read random like flyers on a wall or diary entries in a Bethesda game as much as I have in Starfield. I think what they do with like Constellation and like the United Colonies and the Freestar Collective is so fascinating in that game. Um, just the kind of like post Earth setting and the level of realism they go for in that game. Ironically, as a game set in space, giving credit for realism, but like I think there's something really special there. What they've made with that universe. I think it's also stunning. Probably the best looking game Bethesda Game Studios has made,
Mm-hmm.
down to the way the ships look, the aesthetics, the little food packages where you've got like beer and juice boxes. There's just so much detail in those smaller aspects of the game that I really appreciate. Um, it's probably still one of my favorite games of the year, and I think without a shadow of a doubt, the best thing Xbox has published this year.
Yeah, I just want to add like a very small amount to that, but um, I think that perhaps in any other year, I think we look at Starfield a lot higher up than maybe we do right now. I think it's like a lot of games is we're just looking at like such a stacked year, but it's definitely one of my favorite games of the year. It does have that freedom, and it also has that unpredictability where we're not really going to get to see everything in that game for years, just simply because there's a certain way that the game wants you to do things, but it gives you so much freedom that like you can find yourself accomplishing your goals in ways that you never even imagined. Um, the other thing that Bethesda does really, really, really well are details, and that specifically stands out to me with the spaceships. Like being able to like basically Lego build your own spaceship, and some of the creations that have come out of that are really cool. But when you're in your spaceship and like you're strapping into your seat and just the details of the buttons and the knobs and the details of like the airlocks and whatnot and the way that they've sort of taken a very um, I guess like not hand drawn but like a very like purposeful approach to the way that everything sort of operates. It's easily one of my favorite games to be in this year for sure.
And like I think a big difference when you compare it to the other Bethesda games is like they added some brand new gameplay experiences here. Being a space game, right? The whole spaceship combat environment, the way that you fly your ship, it just is it's a departure from, you know, a lot of their games are in like the fantasy universe, right? Or like, you know, the Elder Scrolls,
Fantasy or
right?
dystopian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic or fantasy
And-
are the two games. Yeah.
And to like see like their take on like a futuristic world, and like you said, just the optionality that is given to players when it comes to building ships. Like we've seen the Millennium Falcon built by people, and just the amount of creativity that you can have in that is, I think, a key differentiator for that game when you compare it to like the Fallout series or
Todd Howard
even
talked
Elder
about
Scrolls.
how you get out of Starfield what you put into it. And I think that's really important because there's going to be people that play that and many other games. It's not exclusive to Starfield, but if you expect it to sort of like guide you through everything, yeah, it'll do that and you can play through the story and you might enjoy that. But like the true, I guess, you know, the true Bethesda experience is that the more that you're willing to invest, like reading those notes, exploring the world, taking your time, trying different things, like the more you do that, the better the game is going to be to you. And that's sort of like if you're willing to put that investment in, that's the kind of player that really loves this game.
Yeah, Bethesda games have always excelled at rewarding you for picking a direction and just walking
And
and seeing what you can discover.
and then I want to
And
also
that's kind of extrapolated with Starfield of like, hey, I'm gonna fly to this star and just see what's over there. You know, there's no marker telling me to go there. I'm just gonna go fly over and see what I find. Follow my nose.
I also thought I got a bad rap from like because this is a science fiction game, not a post-apocalyptic or a fantasy game. From like a lot of those people who just had a lot of hours in games like was it Star Citizen? You know, like they wanted this like true realistic space sim, and that wasn't it. Even though like I don't know why anyone thought it was going to be a true realistic space sim because like Bill said, a lot of the stuff is the first time Bethesda has done ship combat. You know, multiple planets. Like the scale of the world is the biggest they've ever done, and like I feel like those people came out of the woodwork and like really gave it a bad taste in everyone's mouth because like I can't land on a planet like seamlessly. That's ridiculous. And this is like that's the thing that we're gonna pick on, like the the fact that you can't set a course 5 hours this direction and it hits an invisible wall like the walls. Like that's what we're gonna like
I
pick on
think
the
it's
game
just
for.
because games like Star Citizen, Elite Dangerous, and No Man's Sky exist. So there are games already out there. And obviously No Man's Sky had to change a lot from launch to where they are today to get to where it is. But like you can do that in a lot of other spacefaring games. Now, No Man's Sky isn't an RPG, so I don't think it's fair to compare the two. Star Citizen,
It's a sim.
okay,
It's a sim.
Yeah, but it's also a game that is it out? Like it's
Is it done?
like what is it?
Yeah.
Like
I
I don't
don't want to
talk.
go down this rabbit hole.
I'm sorry, but like yeah, like so.
And then
I
Elite
think-
Dangerous is just sort of flying and mining. They may have updated with some other parts, but you don't have the RPG elements in Elite Dangerous that you do.
That's
in
what I'm
Starfield.
getting at.
Yeah.
Is like I
Starfield
think
doesn't like all. It might not do the individual parts the best within that individual parts genre, but across the board, there's such breadth to what you can do.
I think that like the blessing and the curse of Starfield is the procedural generation of your experiences on planets, and that can become stale to some people. Greg, or I don't know who said it, but like you can just walk in one direction. That's not necessarily true on the planets, is it? Like you eventually you kind
I
of
mean, like
hit
4 kilometers in one direction, which I don't know what
It's
that
four
is.
kilometers, and then if you were literally to fast travel, like if you hit a wall and were to fast travel 10 feet in front of you, you would see the same thing. Like it's not gonna like regenerate a completely different.
Like a
Like if you're
treadmill.
walking and you hit an invisible wall and there's like a building in front of you and you fast travel 10 feet in front of you, it's gonna load another 4 kilometers, and that building's still there.
hmm
So it's just that they're not allowing you to physically walk more than like 4 kilometers squared.
which is obviously a lot of walking. But I just think
Sam did it.
it's something. It's something. I know Sam did it for science. But yeah, like I think that's something to note that in a year where there's a lot of open world games that may be more detailed, the decision to use procedural generation I think was necessary because of the scope of the game and the scale of all the planets that you're going to. But I think it also is a negative to some people. That's outside of what Greg was talking about because I don't think it's fair to compare a space sim to this game. It's an RPG set in space. Like I think it's very different.
Yeah.
And at least you can fly the spaceship unlike Destiny 2. I mean, come on. That's all I gotta say about that. But yeah, anyone else have
Coffin
things
shots out here.
anyone have to say anything else about Starfield? Do you want to move on to the next one? Okay, let's move on. Next nomination is Forza Motorsport. I believe Jan reviewed that for us as a freelancer. Uh, I've played a little bit of it. It's a Forza game. Forza makes very good games. If you that franchise, I'm more of a Horizon fan than I am of the motorsport side of the franchise, but they make excellent games. They do a good job of recreating racetracks. I wouldn't call it a sim. It's definitely more of an arcade sort of racer, but it's high quality. Graphics are outstanding.
Sound quality is always outstanding.
Yeah.
It's one of those games where it really showcases the best that the Xbox can do, and also it's on PC. So if you got it on PC Game Pass or whatever, but yeah, it's a very polished racing game, made by a Microsoft studio. Definitely deserves a nomination. I don't think
He
there's a
was
whole lot to
very-
get into there.
Yeah, just like real quick, like he was very high in the graphics as you mentioned, and he was very impressed with like he has obviously like a racing sim setup. So he's got
Mhm.
the wheel and the pedals and everything and like multiple monitors and displays, and he was very like impressed with how everything just worked, like his gear just worked. And the graphics as well, and his thoughts were it's a cool game if you want to like co-op and whatnot and chill with a friend and race and whatnot. So but
Yeah.
to your point, not so much a sim.
No, and I think it gets kind of like what we were talking about with Starfield. I think Forza gets compared to Sims a lot of the time, and it's not. It's definitely an arcade racer.
Very advanced arcade racer, but
Yeah.
arcade racer nonetheless.
Like it still is an arcade racer. It has elements that you would see in a racing sim. The career mode is pretty fun. So like I like what they've done with their customizing of vehicles and stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but it's been going on for a really long time over there. I know they have two studios that kind of go every other year, every other year. But like I said, I personally feel that like we may have seen a peak of the Forza franchise because I just don't know what else they can do. So it's a solid franchise, but it's one of those games where like I don't feel compelled to buy it every year it comes out. Because
I think the thing is it's so much more regular than say Gran Turismo. Like every time a new
Mhm.
GT comes out, it feels fresh because it's been years and years since the last one. Where this time it feels like, oh, okay, Forza's out again, cool,
Yeah, because to your point, David, like usually Gran Turismo when it comes out, it's like a big showcase of the latest PlayStation hardware.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just can't do that every year, right? Like it's just kind of pointless. And I don't think that Forza is doing an every year thing, but like because they do Horizon and then Motorsport
Like
and
close
Horizon and
enough,
Motorsport.
right? Like it
Yeah,
feels like, oh, already,
yeah, and like I think the Horizon games definitely become more popular based on what locations they choose. So I think Forza Horizon 3 is still my favorite, which was based in Australia. And yeah, like I'm sure Forza Horizon 5 or whatever they do next is going to be great too. But at some point, I think it's unfortunate because there's nothing wrong with these games, but there's like a diminishing return to trying to iterate on this annually. But yeah, Forza Motorsport definitely deserves a nomination as an Xbox Studios game that is very high quality and on Game Pass. So you don't have to go out and buy it. You can just try it. Next up, Hi-Fi Rush. Wow, this is very surprising release. It was shadow dropped right during an Xbox event, like super early this year.
January.
Yeah.
I remember January.
This game's gorgeous. I love the art style of this game. It's like you're playing an anime in real life. I love how the music, like every element of the world reacts to the music. Right? So it's a game that, yeah, you have to tap buttons to the beat or whatever, but boy, do you have a lot of visual cues. Like, it is a feast for the eyes, and it's a feast for the senses, because the way that they interact, or the way that they interconnect audio and visuals in this game, outstanding. I like those scenes where you're like in front of this massive crowd, and like it's awesome. I love this game. And I think it's one of those games that is being forgotten because of just how long ago it came out. And also that we're just in a year, just an unprecedented year of video game releases.
So it's a fight. It's like a action fighting game, isn't it, Nasif? Do you want to just?
I would say it's like an action adventure rhythm fighter game, like a rhythm beat 'em up, more than it is a fighter. But yeah, like you're smashing people in the head with your guitar. You're doing all sorts of cool moves. And it is, I wouldn't say it's like Devil May Cry, but it kind of feels like it at times. Like just the combos that you can put together. But yeah, I love it.
And
it's
if you miss any of those cues, those bosses smash you. And and they make you look like a pretzel. It's hilarious. I love the animation in this game.
And the audio cues also sound bad when you're playing bad, right? Like it sounds like you're hitting the wrong chord at the wrong time, like stuff like that. Yeah, you're right. You do get your ass kicked in that game if you're not on rhythm.
I saw a GIF of a scene where Chai goes to catch somebody who's falling, and if you miss the cue, he slides way too far forward, and they just hit the ground behind him. It's just the failure states of that game are hilarious.
Yep. And I like the characters. I think it's like they built out a whole new universe there of characters that you're like interested in or cool looking. They have funny names like Chai, which is T. Yeah, that's a game that came out this year for Xbox, and it's by an Xbox studio, and it's on Game Pass, so you can try it not for free, but for the whatever dollars a month that you pay for Game Pass. So it's
it was published by Bethesda, so it's actually the second Bethesda on the list.
Isn't it the team that did Evil Within?
I wanted to get into that. It was this game was the last greenlit game that we know of by Shinji Mikami before he took off from GameWorks. And coming into Hi-Fi Rush, Mikami wanted to break the idea that Tango GameWorks could only do horror. And so the Evil Within 2 director pitched this game to them, and they worked on like getting it, like the idea of it together, and just like what a drastic departure from everything Tango GameWorks has done up to this point.
It's awesome to see though that the same studio can have that kind of creativity in it, and just I like that whoever greenlit it, right, either inside of Tango or Microsoft themselves, like they took a risk here, and I think it was great. Like I love seeing studios make new IP instead of just like, okay, well, we have to make another Evil Within now. It's like, no, you don't.
And this is arguably better than what they've done with Evil Within. Like David can probably speak more to this, but like the Evil Within wasn't particularly great. Like as a horror
The
franchise.
first one was, I would say, bad.
The Evil Within 2 was pretty dang good, I think.
Yeah, it was better, but that that isn't like they really thought that they were building out like this is going to be the new Resident Evil franchise. Like, no, that's not what happened.
He was riding that momentum, and then it came out, and people were like, "Oh." So I think they lost a lot of momentum and goodwill there.
Yeah,
so I like seeing
a sharp left turn here, and this is great. Like
yeah,
this is better than what they've done before.
Yeah, absolutely, and a really good soundtrack and just fun. It's a fun game. It's challenging though, so like if you're not a rhythm game player, you might struggle with this. So it's like it's probably not a game for everyone, but I love seeing them take risks over there with like a new IP. That's just nice to see in a world where we're probably going to get Gear 6 next year. Next up on the nominees, Minecraft Legends. Ozzy, you've had quite a few preview events and hands-on with this game over time, right?
My exposure with this game was playing it with the staff, and
That's right.
they're long sessions, but as a strategy game, like I enjoy the heck out of Minecraft Legends and going out and beating up piglins and approaching it differently than Minecraft Dungeons. Dungeons is the one that I have a lot more exposure with.
That's what I was thinking of. That's right. So
Yeah.
they're really just slapping words at the end of Minecraft over there at Microsoft these days.
Yeah, this is more of a not. What type of strategy game would you define it as, Donovan, who reviewed this game?
I guess like it's not turn-based, so maybe action strategy because it's all
Something like
happening in real
that. It's
time.
definitely not XCOM strategy, but like it's a different
No,
kind of
no,
like
no.
strategy. I'm sorry, I'm like brain farting at the moment, but like
Yeah, they describe it as an action adventure game and a strategy game. So
it's definitely
Yeah.
not what I
that's
thought
it's
it was
about.
going to be. Which I thought it was
Mhm.
going to be an extension of that Dungeons formula with like a bigger world. But like the worlds
Yeah.
are,
Is it kind of Dynasty Warriors?
nah, I wouldn't call it that.
No. Okay.
But I did have a lot of fun playing it, playing 2v2 with the staff, and I thought it was worthy of consideration on this as some of Xbox first party's fighter work for the year.
Yeah, and I mean they've kind of let Minecraft do their thing in the that actual game, but they're trying to squeeze out a little bit of money from that IP because what it cost $8 billion to acquire Mojang.
Yeah,
Uh,
and
you know,
it's probably it's I personally thought it was better experience on PC and Xbox. It is multi-platform. It is worth noting that, unlike a lot of the other Xbox first party stuff. But
Well-
I do like this as an Xbox game.
I look forward to them doing the same thing with the Tony Hawk franchise. We'll get Tony Hawk Dungeons and Tony Hawk Legends here in the next few years.
Tony Hawk smashing piglins.
Yeah, or just doing a kickflip. But yeah, let's move on. We mentioned this in a previous category, but it's just a solid third-party game that came out this year. So it's going to be mentioned for both the PlayStation 5 Game of the Year nomination as well as the Xbox Series X Game of the Year nomination. Lies of P. This is I'm labeling it Pinocchio Souls from here on out. But yeah, Denny, would you like to chat a little bit more about Lies of P?
Yeah, sure. Liza P. Was a fine action adventure title, but also like we mentioned earlier with Hi-Fi Rush, taking a bit of a risk there. Xbox going in there and adding it to Xbox Game Pass. A relatively unknown, and it showed out this year. Was a pleasant surprise, both gameplay wise. But I think that having that kind of variety and range on in their library definitely is beneficial to the actual Game Pass kind of way they've been building over there as well. But highly impressed by Liza P.
It's weird because like every year that goes by, Game Pass becomes more valuable to the consumer, but at the same time, I think it becomes more deflationary to all game developers because it's like less money is being made if you're not being given like exclusivity money ahead of these deals. So it's like there's only 24 hours in the day to play Game Pass games, right? So like every time a new Game Pass title comes out, well, that's less time available to the whole pie, right? So I think there's a very interesting thing going on with Game Pass where I think some developers would argue that it's actually bad for developers. Not everyone is saying that because, like I said, I think certain deals involve platform exclusivity, and that may be beneficial to a company. I think in the case of Liza P, it probably worked out for them because the game's on other platforms. It's on PC, it's on PlayStation 5. This was a way for people to try it out. And I think that's kind of like at the bare minimum, when you release a Game Pass game, there's about 20 million people who could try out your game. It's kind of what we're finding out with the releases of like even Redfall or like some of these other games. They're like, hey, 20 million people played this. It's like, yeah, that's how many subs you have that were willing to download that thing. So there's that addressable market argument for a game like Lies of P that I think it worked out really well for them. But that's not always the case on Game Pass, I don't think. But yeah, Game Pass is a pretty sweet deal from the consumer standpoint. And Lies of P is one of those examples of how Microsoft's demonstrating value. I just worry that a few years from now, they're just going to keep increasing the price of Game Pass, like what has happened over at Netflix. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But definitely a worthy nomination.
I just wanted to say with Lies of P, 'cause I haven't played it yet, so I can't speak to it, so I'm not here. But I will say that much like I decided to jump completely in on Elden Ring,
So proud
last
of you.
year,
So proud of you.
Lies of P is calling me right now.
Yeah.
So the conversations we've had around
love
it
to
are
see
like
it.
really getting my interest right now.
It's very good. Like, go read the review, go watch our gameplay, go check out the trailers. Like, that game it sticks out. And in this year, to stick out is very hard, especially for like a brand new game. Obviously, the Pinocchio IP is known, but at the same time, this is not what the Pinocchio IP is known for at all.
It's pretty twists and turns that I don't think are part of any of the
Is-
lore from
Is
previous
Jiminy
Pinocchio
Cricket?
projects.
Do you end up killing Jiminy Cricket in this? Like, I'm just curious, like how deep this rabbit hole goes in Lies of P. I agree, though. Our conversations have made me more interested in it as well, Bill.
I had it in my cart, and then everybody here saved me with Game Pass. So
Yeah, Game
And I also
Pass.
did want to bring up that the devs also did a good job. Even before the game released, they had a full demo portion that they had live for over a month that people got to play and try, and they took that feedback to heart before releasing the full game. So it got even more polished before release, and I think that actually helped a lot on that
Yep.
end. So people
I
got
love
it piqued
seeing
their
that.
interest, and they saw it on Game Pass, and they're like, "Oh, I might as well download it. Why not?"
As you know, the resident old here, I love seeing demos or betas that are actually betas,
Mhm.
as opposed to just, oh, our game launches in 2 weeks. Here's a free trial. It's like, no, try out our game, tell us what you think's wrong with it, and we're gonna get back in the studio and work on it. I appreciate when devs do that, because not every demo is that, or beta or whatever you want to call them. But yeah, check out Lies of P if you haven't. It's on Xbox Game Pass, which is why it's been nominated for Xbox Series X Game of the Year. Our last nomination, which I mentioned earlier, is Resident Evil 4. It's just one of the greatest games of all time, getting remade and running amazing and looking amazing and fixing every cringy part of the original. So yeah, we're gonna be talking about RE4 a lot during these deliberations. I think it's up for many nominations across many platforms and categories. It's an excellent video game. Highly recommend it. Capcom. I feel like, we've been talking about these remakes every year they come out, right? So RE3, when that was remade, it was in our discussions for a lot of Game of the Year or Shacknews Awards. RE2 remake was right there. It was the number 2 game of the year in that year's deliberations. It had maybe the best cheeseburger we've ever seen in a video game. So yeah, it feels like those games, those efforts were all building up to this moment, David.
And you're exactly right. And I would also say that going back to the original RE remake in 2002, a mere 6 years after the first one came out, Capcom does not miss. They do remakes better than anybody, and we'll get into that in other categories, I'm sure.
Sure. But yeah, if you missed RE4 when it came out originally, this is definitely the way to play it now. And it's out on multiple platforms. It's out on PlayStation 5. It was nominated for Best PlayStation 5 Game of the Year as well. And it deserves to be up here for Xbox Series X Game of the Year as well. But we'll get into it, I'm sure, in other categories like Best Horror or Best, remake.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's probably other categories that we're going to be talking about this in. And also just, it may end up in our top 10 games of the year. I wouldn't be surprised. So let's vote. I'm gonna start. Let's start with Greg. What's your best Xbox game?
I mean, it's like Starfield. That game should get this award for this release. It got snubbed in other categories of the Game Awards, but yeah, I think it's a good Xbox game, Starfield.
Okay. TJ. You're muted.
I'm gonna go with Starfield.
Starfield. Ozzy.
I'm gonna go with Hi-Fi Rush.
Okay. Bill.
Starfield.
Sam.
Starfield.
Denny.
And I'm gonna show some love to Liza P.
Nice. David.
Starfield.
You almost said RE4, I think.
It's going to be
Donovan.
a problem, a recurring problem. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the Starfield train.
Okay. Well, congratulations, Todd Howard. And we're waiting for the check. Because I heard when we posted our Starfield review that we were paid to give it a good score. So looking forward to getting that check. Really looking forward to getting that check, Xbox. But congratulations to Bethesda Game Studios, ZeniMax, Satya Nadella, Phil Spencer, Pete Hines. Shout out Pete. This is the last game that Pete launched over there at Bethesda. Starfield, your Xbox Series X Game of the Year 2023.
Forever.